Hey, Nikolai, welcome back.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Why the underscore is your favorite feature in Java 21?
All right, that's a good one. It's a preview feature in 21, but it got finalized in 22 as is. There were 0 changes. And also, it's not really clear what you would even change about the feature because it is one of the simplest features that Java got recently, maybe. Because all it does is you give a variable the name underscore, and then you can never reference it.
Yeah.
Like what usually happens is a variable that you declare is added to the scope, and that's how you can reference it. And when you use the name underscore, it's just not added to the scope, and that means you cannot reference it. And also, you can have more than one underscore variable in the same scope.
Okay.
Because, if you have a variable X or unused, you cannot have several of those, but you can have several that have the underscore. So it's super simple, but it becomes very, very important in pattern matching. Maybe I should go into that for a second.
Yeah, you say you cannot change. They cannot change it. Maybe they will replace underscore with backslash, right?
Well, again, it's already final in 22, so no change.
Okay.
But also the underscore is used very wide in other languages that have this construct. It's also the underscore, just because it visually tells you something is missing, right? It's just like it looks like nothing is there. It's the best placeholder, I think, except for a space. But I think that would be a terrible mechanism in a language to give.
I would try to come up with a killer feature, and you tell me whether this is the killer feature or not. So what I can imagine is how to call it deconstruction, not destructuring, deconstruction of records, right? Because if you get sag mal is let's say a larger record with several variables, and you're only interested in 2 of them, all others are underscores, so you are not forced, to react to the unwished. It's like a projection. This is a nicer way to implement projections, where you get a big record in, and you would like, to picture some interesting variables and move them out, right? Is it one of the killer features?
Yeah, so that's what it's used for, and it's very helpful in that way. But I would not describe that as the killer feature. It's like that's I think probably even going to be used for that more than what I will describe for. But
okay, go ahead. I'm curious about your thing.
I will. But the point is what you describe with the destruction. That's very super useful, right? You get a record that has like 5 components. You only need the second and the fourth. Just underscore the other ones and go ahead. It's very readable. It's very cool. But you don't need that feature. What you could do as well is you could just call the accessor on the record. That would be more cumbersome. And if you have nested deconstruction, it would be even more cumbersome, basically cumbersome squared. So it's cool to have the underscore for that, but you can achieve the same outcome with something else. Now, what we really want the underscore for, or what I really like the underscore for, I should say rather, is that when you switch over a sealed type, you want to enumerate all possible subtypes. The compiler forces you that when you switch over any complex type, like not over an int or over a string is what I'm saying, when you switch over a general object, you need to make sure that you have all cases covered. That means all possible, if it's an interface, all possible implementations must be covered. Now, in general, that's not possible, right? If I say switch over a list, I cannot have a case branch for all possible implementations of list because I don't know how many there are. This interface is open to be extended by everybody. There could be all kinds of implementations. So in that case, the only way to achieve this, I covered all possible subtypes, is to use a default branch. And that's good in that case. But there's this other specific case where I use a sealed interface, where I say, let's switch over this sealed interface that only has, let's say, 3 implementations A, B, and C. And then I do not need the default branch. It's enough if I say handle A, handle B, handle C. Each has its own case label. Each has its own branch. Something happens in that branch. That's all nice. And that means all possible implementations of the interface, which are A, B, and C, they're all covered, and that's good. And then I do not need a default branch. Still, the switch is exhaustive, and the compiler is happy. And that's very important because if I add an implementation D, I will now get a compile error for that switch. And that's important because if I add a new implementation, all operations that don't cover that new type, they should break. The compiler should force me and tell me, hey, look, you have an operation that goes across all types, but actually you're missing one now, the new one you just added. Please come here and fix this. So that's good. I want that compile error. Okay, so we learned if I switch over sealed type, I want to avoid the default branch. Oh, right, I didn't explicitly say that. But if I have a default branch in a sealed type and I add a 4th implementation, we'll just silently fall into the default branch, right? So then I do not get the compile error. So that's why I want to avoid the default branch. If I switch over sealed type, I want to list all subtypes and avoid the default branch. Okay, that's the setup. Now here comes underscore. What if I have default behavior though? For A, I want to do something, and for B and C, I want to do nothing. And then the canonical way to write that would be to write switch over this interface, case A, arrow, do whatever. Default arrow, do nothing, right? Because that's the default for B and C. But then I get type D, and then it also falls in the default branch. Silently, I don't get a compile error. That's a problem. What do I do here? Now, the only way to fix this is to avoid the default branch and to have explicit branches for B and C as well. So that would mean A, do something, B, do nothing, C, do nothing. And if I have like 5 more implementations, I go D, do nothing, E, do nothing, F, do nothing. That's terrible, and people don't want to write that code. On Java 21, you absolutely should write the code like that. Or you enable preview features, or you should switch to 22, and then you can combine several branches with the underscore. Then you can write case B underscore, comma, C underscore, comma, however many else you want to have, arrow, do nothing. So that specifically is the reason why I like the underscore so much, because it allows you to write something that is in effect a default branch, but still explicitly lists all the types. And that gives you a defaulty behavior that is somewhat short to express, while at the same time giving you a compile error when you add a new type. I think that's why it's so important. And that's why it's a little bit of a shame that it didn't make it into 21 as a final feature, because 21 has all the pattern matching basics. You can now really use that feature in practice. And I've started doing that, and it's great. Like every program I wrote since then, I always find like some corner where like, oh yeah, no, this makes sense here. Let's use a sealed interface. Let's have 3 implementations. It's the good solution for this part of the problem, at least. And there the underscore becomes in really handy.
2 statements or observations. First one, I think the default will become a bad practice soon, right?
If you switch over sealed interface, yes, I would recommend to avoid default like the plague, because then the kind of contract with the sealed interface is I will switch over it, and I will want my switches to break when I add a new implementation. And the default branch actively goes against that. So I think when you switch over sealed type, yes, avoid it. If you switch over a regular type, you switch over a list or something, not only can you not avoid it, but also that's okay, right? Because with list, you don't know how many implementations there are. The whole mechanism doesn't quite work, and that's fine too. But there's also fewer reasons to switch over something like list. So I think the default branch clearly has its place, when you switch over strings and integers and whatever. When you switch over complex types that are not sealed, this is probably going to be rare. Default branch, also good. Just when you switch over sealed types, don't use the default branch.
And the another interesting thing is Java 21 is LTS and Java 22 is not LTS. But Java 21...
You want me to get angry at you, Adam?
Pardon?
You want me to get angry at you?
No.
For saying Java 21 is LTS. I made a whole video explaining why that phrasing is not good. We can come to that later.
Okay, but regardless whether you're angry or I'm happy that the problem is, this is what big companies are believing in it, and they will stick on at least, this is Java 21 because it's LTS. So I now tell my clients not to watch your videos because this is my way to get Java 21. So I always say, we have Java 17, forget it. This is unsecure. We have to use Java 21 because it's LTS, and this is how I get it. If you distribute your lies that Java 21 is not LTS, I have a problem in my projects, right? So
wait, but you cannot tell people that 17 is not secure. I mean, it is also by the same logic, you would say it's also LTS, and we can come into a second why I don't think that's a good way to phrase it. But 17 is just as LTS as 21, and so you get all the security fixes, definitely.
I'm telling my client whatever is necessary to get Java 21, right? So this is I don't care. So I will invent stories until I get Java 21, but
I officially disapprove of that. But
go on. Okay, and so on the interesting part is what will happen. My client will for whatever reasons they will stick on Java 21 longer. But the interesting part is if I already know that Java 22 has the underscore as a feature, I know that it's set in stone. So it means I could actually consider underscore as released in Java 21. And enable this preview, right? Because what can happen, of course, this internally is some unstable behavior, which I don't believe. But from the language perspective, from source code perspective, it is actually released. So the interesting part is if you stick on older Javas, and you know that in newer Java, the features become released, you could actually, what could happen actually, right? So interesting consideration. The OpenJDK project or whoever's in charge, they can decide, okay, maybe we can backport this feature to maybe we can make it final in Java 21 afterwards. If the next update, we can remove the previous stuff, right?
Yeah, so that's an interesting consideration. So basically what you're saying is if we know the feature gets finalized later unchanged, why not backport? And the backport would not be technical.
No.
I mean, there's like the technical implementation of, getting it out of the enable preview flag, basically. But it would be a spec change, right? Would retroactively change the spec to say, by the way, this feature is final now. That was a question that was raised before, and I asked that to Brian Getz. And he told an interesting story. It's a podcast, so it's good. We have story time.
Yeah.
So now I'm reiterating his story. That means I might add my own misunderstanding and mistakes.
Of course, I
So
will
if any
also
of this is
reiterate
wrong-
it later, so it doesn't matter. This is like
play a game of telephone, exactly. Right. So here's how the story goes. The Japanese calendar is based on the emperor. That means if the emperor dies, a new kind of calendar phase begins. I don't know how exactly that goes, but like some calendar stuff changes, and immediately because the next emperor is known. And so when the emperor dies, like basically the next day, the new calendar starts.
Okay.
So Java is often used in banks. Many Japanese banks use Java. The emperor dies on a Friday. And what do banks care about a lot? Except money? Dates, times, registering stuff happening at specific points in time. Banks cannot open on Monday if Java does not understand the new calendar. So over the weekend, more or less, Java needs to change the spec so the datetime API will now understand the new calendar that goes in effect because the emperor died very suddenly. Apparently, that was, I think, the problem. So that's pretty much, apparently, that's the level. So Brian Getz concluded the answer to that question. That's the level of urgency that needs to be fulfilled for a spec change like that. So for situations like these, like the one you just described, there won't be a spec change for that. Which I'm not a member of OpenJDK, so I can just have my own opinions on that. And I would say I don't quite disagree with that logic. I think what you described, the use case, is an excellent example where I think a spec change would work quite fine. Like if the feature didn't change like at all, I don't know, like a spec change would be really, really cool. Because the way it is, I think it's actually reasonable to say, yeah, I know this feature doesn't change between 21 and its finalization. Yeah. I'm going to use the preview feature here. The problem with that is that the flag enable preview enables all previews. And now people start using other features.
Oh, this is
and
the
those
problem.
Features might change.
This is a huge problem. Okay.
Right. So because of the quality of the feature in 21, in general, every preview feature it's done. It's final. It's as safe and as performant and as reliably implemented as any other feature was in the past when it came out. The only difference is it might still change in the future. So that's all it means. So preview features are production ready in the sense that there's no technical reason not to use them. But there is the organizational reason not to use them because, if they change in the future, you have to go back and rewrite a lot of code potentially. And you maybe don't want that, right? So getting in Java 21, getting string templates, writing 2 years worth of string template code, and then maybe something changes between 21 and the next version with LTS, that would be 25. And then you have to rewrite 2 years worth of string template code. You probably don't want to do that. So that's why, using preview features in production is not too much of a great idea because the code that you run in production is probably written and edited by a lot of people for a lot of time. But if you have something that, one guy or one girl works on, I don't know, once a month for a day, you can rewrite those few changes if the preview feature changes.
Or it's your own microservice, you can encapsulate such stuff
So if you're willing to rewrite code that uses a preview feature, every time you write a preview feature, ask yourself, am I willing to rewrite this or throw this away? And if the answer is yes, you can use it in production. It's fine. So coming back to the situation here, yeah, I think absolutely people in 21 could consider, let's use the underscore as a preview feature. But then if they enable preview, the flag, that means they also get access to string templates.
That's the problem.
For function memory API. Yeah, and then you can quickly slide into, because then you have no control, right? If you have no other tool that guards against this, then you can start using other preview features, maybe without noticing even. And that wouldn't be great. So that would always have to be a conscious decision. And so, but if you have another tool guarding you against that, right, you can, for example, use something like Sonar or something like checkstyle and ban imports and be like, no, if you import the class string template then break the build, for example, and that way you could guard yourself against use of string templates.
Do you know whether the Japanese emperors are coming and going more frequently, or is it like I think it happens every 50 years, so I have no idea.
I have no insight into that. I don't know how the next one is selected, because if the one gets very old and the next one would be his son, I would presume it's probably male-oriented, but I'm not sure about that. So let's say the next one would be his oldest living ancestor, then that would just be like a 20, 30-year jump, and then you would get another 30 years that the now ancestor is also old and dies. But maybe it doesn't work that way. I don't know. Maybe it's like a younger person, and then it can be like 50, 60, 80 years. I have no clue how that works.
Because what I thought about, right, he actually lives a little bit dangerous, because the entire Japanese software industry is waiting until something happens there, right? Because then they get interesting project, to deal with the data. This is almost like year 2000 problem, right? So I think.
So I mean, if employment goes down, somebody would be like, there's one way to stay employed.
Suddenly, the emperor switched. So and then the software industry is doing well again in Japan. That is what I thought.
I'm not sure. I have the impression from the outside, not knowing the culture very well, that they kind of, that they like the emperor, and that it's culturally embedded that you don't just murder him for employment possibilities.
This changes
but I'm not sure,
the
though.
entire strategy. But regardless, what Brian explained with the emperor, the story, has less to do with our thing, right? Because what we would just do with a dedicated JDK patch, we would make the string template, the underscore just a GA feature, right?
But that means it's a spec change. It's more of a specification change than anything else, because the specification for 21 clearly says this is a preview feature. It can change.
Okay.
It's not part of the JLS. So if you look at the JLS for Java 21, you will find
it will never happen. From the enterprise perspective, forget it, because what could happen then, right? Some developer would just use underscores and he wouldn't understand what it does, and then someone can sue the Oracle provider, say, look, in the spec we have this, and you are providing that. This is a mess. I would say the spec change. This is also from contractual perspective, maybe a little bit problematic if you're paying for support. I would say from the enterprise political level is a little bit problematic, but from software level, you're right. Also, I will start to use the underscores right now, and and this is my take on it. And interesting part, Sebastian Daschner.
Yes, of course.
He was at Java 1. I think it was prior to Corona. And they did like a theater. So I was a little bit afraid of it. So I watched it from the distance. So this was a keynote. And he was, And they make like a show. This was like a theater show or theme of, or whatever. And I just watched that. And at this Java 1, the change was that the underscore became unusable.
Yes, that would have been the Java 9 time. It was removed.
And he did a sketch or something about that. That suddenly he cannot. Java 9 is terrible because underscore cannot be used anymore. And I think it was keynote. So it has to be recorded somewhere, but it was the community keynote. And the interesting part, I'm pretty sure, right? That it was the foresight that they already knew back then that the underscore could be usable for different things in the future, because and this is the interesting part. So we only have to research when the keynote happened, right? And how long such a feature, the foresight is amazing. Actually, they say, okay, we would like to use it in the future, so we know now it's the time to deprecate it or forbid it to use. Actually, and
So I think OpenJDK would be happy to take that praise, but I'm not quite sure about that exactly. So where you can also use the underscore is let's say you use an API that accepts a buy function. A buy function takes 2 parameters and returns 1 result. And then you have a situation where you don't need actually the second parameter. And there you can also use the underscore. Maybe you have to define a function, but because you're doing something strange, you don't need the input parameter. You just need the output. So in the past, you would write maybe something like unused or a single letter or something, and then arrow, and then what you do, right? So you're not referencing all the Lambda parameters. And in function programming languages, they often have the underscore. In Java also, you can now use the underscore in that place where you say, I don't need the second parameter, I don't even need any parameters, use the underscore. Function programming languages also often do that. So the demise of underscore as a regular variable name started with Java 8. So when Java 8 came out, the single underscore was deprecated for removal as a variable name. And so my understanding is, but I never asked explicitly, my understanding was this was motivated by the use case in lambdas.
Okay.
And then it became clear, I think, when Project Amber started and the pattern matching story started, that it has a place there as well. And that's why I think it took this long. I think if we didn't have any pattern matching on the horizon, my guess would have been that we got the underscore for unused variables in lambdas much sooner. So I think it was triggered by the introduction of lambdas. And then when pattern matching appeared on the horizon, it was clear it's going to be useful there as well. So let's wait until we get there to make sure that we get it right for all of these situations. And so that's why it took from 8, where it was deprecated, in 9 it was forbidden, and then all the way to now 21 to be introduced as a preview feature.
By the way, you mentioned bifunction. You know what the difference between bifunction and binary operator without looking at Javadoc?
Yeah, sure. Operator has the same output type as input type.
Exactly. And this is actually like a nicer bifunction, because I was like, what is operator, right? And the binary operator inherits from bifunction, and you can provide one template parameter, and what it means is 2 ints in, 1 int out. So you can just set all the generic parameters at once, which is by the way a nice pattern, right? That you can do something like this. You can set with one type parameter all the inputs and outputs. So just you mentioned that, and I found the binary operator recently, and I said, okay, this is interesting. I didn't know that it inherits from bifunction.
So does the same thing as with operator and function. So you can think of binary operator, even though it is like in the context of all of these interface names, binary operator kind of like emerges as, and you could think, oh yeah, sure, binary function, so it's binary and it's an operator because it has the same input and output type, so that's where that comes from. But binary operator has a specific meaning outside of that scope as well, right? Addition is a binary operation. It takes, not because it works on zeros and ones, but because it takes 2 inputs and produces one output of the same type: addition, subtraction, multiplication. So that's a kind of operation that is very, very present in any kind of definition of mathematical. I'm not sure what the English terms. I studied math once. Bodies. I think Körper is the German word. When you define in algebra, it's important algebra, right? So the concept of taking 2 elements from a set and doing an operation and returning an element from the same set, and the function is a generalization of that, where you say I'm taking inputs from different things and producing potentially different outcomes. So yeah, an operator is a specific subcase of a function. I want to tell, if that's okay, a little anecdote about the underscore, if we still have time for that.
Yeah, sure. We have infinite time, but just where I found, or recently, I used the files find, and this files find, and there is files walk. I think there are two APIs in a project, and then I say, this is actually cool, so I recorded a short, and someone asked me about that. And it turns out that this file walker, it takes the binary operator, actually, binary function, because if it walks, the tree, it calls with 2 parameters u, and you have to decide whether it's found or not found, and it passes to your path and the attribute, the file basic attribute. 2 parameters in and out is Boolean. And so I implemented this in my project, then recorded a short, and someone asked me, what's the thing? So I explained that, and then I said, okay, but there's an operator even cooler. So and replaced my internal binary function, bifunction, with the binary operator because it's nicer. It is just shorter, right? But for the file, it is not a operator. It has to be bifunction because there are 3 different types. So this is path and file basic attribute, and what comes out is a Boolean. So, but yeah, interesting story. And you are referring to the third use case, like the binary operator means function with 2 parameters, basically, or 2 arguments, or how to call it in functions, to something, right?
And I think wouldn't that be a binary predicate? Because if you have to return Boolean, you usually don't use a function, you use a predicate. I'm sure actually whether a binary predicate exists in the package. Like, I think it does, but I'm not sure.
This was interesting. So maybe this is another interesting question. Predicate would be actually a better way, but I'm pretty sure it was by function.
I also think predicate actually extends function and is a function to Boolean. Let's look all this up.
Okay, so I will take a look at this. But
and also I want to say, like, but that's a great example, by the way, for where you want to use the underscore. You get the path and you get the file attributes.
And I don't care about the file attributes. Exactly.
They want to underscore out the attributes. Yeah. So there is absolutely a by predicate.
Hey, this is with the next short. So to remember, actually, this is I can shorten this using the underscore, exactly. But I was surprised because I know I ask everyone, so what is your favorite Java 21 feature? And everyone's like, okay, Loom. And then I ask you and they say underscore. I was like, okay, this is an interesting take. But you're actually right with the underscores, and the deconstruction is way nicer.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, we gotta admit that to a degree, it's also because the other answers are kind of like obvious and by that mean then boring, right? Like everybody gives the same answer, so I want to stand out a bit. I want to feel special. So that's why I came up with a weird answer. But the underscore, the thing that I just told a story about its deprecation and then its removal in Java 9. Back in the days, I did not catch the deprecation. When Java 8 came out, I was just beginning to understand that Java even has versions because I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. I was working so loosely with...
You were already the far ahead, exactly.
Yeah, I was working so loosely with Java before that, like at school and then during university. And the changes specifically later before the release of Java 8, when I was working in university a little bit more closely with it, it was also very far between and not exactly like the biggest changes, right? We can later tell you, in case you don't know, why Project Coin was called Project Coin, which introduced a few changes in Java 7. But the point being is that I didn't notice that Java changed. And when Java 8 was about to come out, I was already reading blog posts from other people, and they started talking about this thing that's going to change and lambdas. And I was confused on two fronts. First, what this lambda thing? And second, what do you mean Java changes? I didn't know. So I didn't catch the underscore deprecation back then. I only noticed it when it was removed in Java 9. And I read through the rationale and I was like, oh yeah. No, when I use lambdas, I often have this, well, not often, but when you use lambdas a lot, it pops up at least once or twice a week that I have this problem of I don't need this other variable. What am I going to do with it? I cannot use the underscore anymore. Damn it. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to use 2 underscores. So if you look through my old code, you will find 2 underscores, but 2 underscores is a regular variable name. It is in scope. You cannot have 2 variables with the same name with 2 underscores. So when I need a second unused variable in the same scope, I started to go to 3 underscores. But that's very rare, and I never had to do 4 underscores. So I'm kind of happy with that. So that's why I kind of have the story of underscore still.
So it means if you're producing software, you have the version 1, 2 underscores means complex, 3 underscores crazy complex, and 4 underscores. Mission impossible, right?
Yeah, it kind of does, right? If you need 4 underscores, it means you nested lambdas 3 levels deep, and also you have not used a bunch of variables. That's definitely something fishy going on there.
Yeah, pretty cool. I interrupted you with the underscore story. Was it this story we wanted to tell?
It was this story.
Okay, and Project Coin, I think we discussed already Project Coin, the name, but this was small changes. This is like why coin, right? This is my...
Yeah. Small change, exactly. When you say small change, it's like I didn't know, but the project knew it was going to do very little. So because it was going to do small change, it was called coin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I thought was very funny.
Yeah, but this was official. I think they introduced it like that on official channels, Java 1 or something, because otherwise I wouldn't remember. So I think this was the thing. But
yeah, that's entirely possible. But Coin was before I understood how OpenJDK works internally, and before I started following any of these projects. So to me, Lambda was basically the first project that I understood as a project in OpenJDK. Mm-hmm. Every project before that, to me, is history. Mm-hmm. So Project Lambda to me is about as present as Project Loom, which is crazy because there are lots of developers who started using Java in between, and for them, Lambda would be history, just like for me, Coin is history. But mm-hmm. Lambda is still fresh. I lived through that. And Coin was before that. So that's my distinction there.
Yeah, for me, it's actually also similar because the time gets compressed, right? So, for instance, the underscore with Sebastian Daschner, you are probably right. So Java 9 or Java 10 introduction, which is probably more than 7 years ago. But for me, it looks like, just before Corona or something. So I will 4 years something, right? So this is hard to estimate. So how fast time flies, right?
I think specifically Corona kind of like ripped a hole into most people's mind, include time track at the same time. Yeah, in the timeline. At the same time, it's like it's a standout thing that happened, mm-hmm. but also like it covered a couple years that, in retrospect, because not that. I mean, I don't want to say not that much happened. Of course, a lot happened, but it's weird. Like, it has this weird morphing effect on how I think back across time. Like, it's really weird. Like, to me, sometimes it feels it was just a blip. Something happened before and after Corona that makes it sound like Corona was like February 2020, but that's not true. It was like at least 2, probably more like 3 years.
Mm-hmm. We wanted to talk about, or I wanted to talk about DOP, but because I remember this right now, are you aware of the project called BLD?
No.
You will like it. So I had already podcasts with Mr. Gert Bevan. And what BLD is, if you search for BLD Rive. So I know I use Java for CLI applications and for automations from just instead of shell scripts a lot. And I told him the story because for me, I can just run Java, you know it, right? Java app.java, and it just compiles behind the scenes and runs code, which is very convenient for me. And this is why I spend some time with the file walkers, whatever, to find files, process files, and stuff like that. And he said he had the idea already 1 year ago, and this BLD is like a build tool without dependencies. So Gert also hates dependencies, and this is a pure Java build tool, which is a crazy idea. No, crazy. It is a great idea ever, because we had a discussion. You could even, if the build tool is part of the app, you can ship the app with the build tool, because you could say I just add, my main method, whatever, and it is able to pull the dependencies. And I like the idea a lot, because usually I go with standards. Maybe you notice this already. So Maven, okay, everyone is Maven, so Maven is a standard. But this is even more standard, because what this means is it uses Maven dependencies and then just pure Java.
Yeah.
And
it's good. Also, you said it's pure Java build tool but it's interesting that I just opened the website, how the claim continues. Pure Java build tool for developers who don't like dealing with build tools. I like that.
Yeah,
I like the way they put it.
I know that you will like it. So maybe you can include those in presentation, because I think it has potential. A huge potential, actually. And I will also, the problem is I don't even need this, because, I try, just to do Java, and then I don't need anything. So, but it is a really interesting approach. I just wanted to give you maybe this as I think you will like it. And the next time we can discuss this, if you like, or if we meet at a conference,
Oh, I got the perfect person for you to talk about this. So I'm not sure whether you know Christian Stein, German guy, also started working for Oracle a little after me. He's on the development side, though, so he actually knows what he's talking about. And he also built a tool like this. He calls it Bach, which is also a pure Java. It seems. I just looking at the BLD homepage, which has a code block there that just shows how to do it. Right, you declare a few variables, and then you basically say, okay, I'm going to pull my Maven central repository here, and then I'm going to include these dependencies. And then there you go, right? And then you have a main method that just starts the build.
Exactly.
So it's you write as Java code what the build tool is supposed to do. And I'm sure what it will do, it will wire together, run Java C, and take the output of Java C and put it into jar. Exactly. So Christian Stein wrote something very similar.
Hey, I will talk with him. So just give me his email after the show.
Yeah, I will. He will love this. But I just, I got to admit, because I was so impressed by this, on the side, I already asked him in Slack whether he knows it. He said, yes, of course he does. So yeah, this is something that would be very, very interesting. And this is really helpful. And I'm going to go out and say it would also be great if, I'm not sure whether it's ever going to happen, but it would be great to have something like this in JDK.
Yes.
Something simple that would allow you to just pipe a few tools together. You don't need the whole complexity of Gradle and Maven, like build time caching and all of that. Like, what you need is just...
It is very important, because the other languages have it. And this will be the expectation of new developers to have it in Java as well. And Java is so powerful already. And, in JDK, it's perfect, because you could actually say, okay, look, this is the Java C compiler API. This is standard. We call it and done. I would say this would be I think this would be very important for Java in longer term to have a minimalistic build tool. Why not, right? Everyone else has it.
Right. I mean, the why not part, so yes, I agree. This would be important, specifically what you just said, for beginners, but also for experienced developers who just want to experiment a bit, right? When I write a little command line tool that, I don't know, for example, good example actually, YouTube stats. So YouTube has analytics, and they offer a download as a CSV file. And I always want to do stuff based on that. So on the Java YouTube channel, by the way, youtube.com/Java, on the Java YouTube channel, for example, our colleagues also publish a bunch of stuff, right? And when I want to see how the newscast is doing and whether it's getting better or worse, how is click-through rate, blah, 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 I want to look into that. I can dump the analytics, but then I want to filter by my show. And that's actually not possible in the YouTube UI. So what I will want to do is I just want to need a little command line, not command line, but a little tool that runs locally, just takes the CSV in, does a few very minor things, and spits out the new CSV. And that I can then load in my poor man's version of Excel. And then I can do whatever, graphs or whatever I want to look at. So stuff like that, right? You just want to do locally a few things. And that's already an example because I don't want to write a CSV parser myself because that's just pure hell. So of course I'm going to use one. So I need a dependency and I need like 2 or 3 source code files. And that's all I want. I don't need a jar. I don't need Maven. I don't need Gradle. I just need this. And for something like that would be really great. So not only for beginners, specifically for them, but also for experienced developers, people using Java outside of in production, like real life projects, just as for hobbies or for personal use. And I know that you do that a lot. For you, that would be really great to have something simple like that on board as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did almost exactly the same what you did, but I don't download the CSV rather than going to a playlist and fetching all the titles and descriptions because I wanted to see what I already recorded. So my YouTube channel is very old. I have, I don't know, maybe 1,000 screencasts or whatever. And sometimes I get the same idea twice, right? So this would be, not to contradict myself, right? So I was okay, did I recorded something like this? Because the shorts I do more like a bookmarks. Okay, this was a great idea. I just record a short and forget about that. And so I don't have the problem in this particular case. It's a pure Java, but I need most of the ideas we talk about there. But I have another example. I use it with clouds a lot. And I have 2 projects. One is called Detonator. It's on my GitHub. It just deletes from my account stuff which I don't need anymore. Log groups, so like log folders and old lambdas and CloudFormation stacks and stuff like that. And this is a simplistic Java project, no dependencies, except one AWS SDK. So I need one SDK, and only for that case I use Maven, right? So this is this is pity because I know Maven is great, but if you do Maven, you have to make the jar executable. So I need another plugin to make it executable. Not a big deal. I have everything, but if I wouldn't have this anything, it would cost me maybe 1 hour, to go to Stack Overflow or ask ChatGPT, create me a Maven, whatever. I have it already, but it's still friction. And if I do the Java way, my Java way, I really start, main and Java or an interface in my case, I just go for it, right? I have nothing. I don't even have a project. I can fire up Visual Studio Code. I have exactly one file, no project, nothing. I guarantee you more productive than Python, whatever, because to set up the entire environment, I will lose more time than Java. You download Java and you are done. This is the thing. And you start the Java file, you have Java app Java. That lowercase and uppercase doesn't matter anymore. You can just run it, whatever it is, the class name. Yeah. This is also crazy. And it works. And if we get a small build tool, just is capable of add, a view dependencies to the class path, it would change a lot, I have to tell.
Yeah. So we have, as I said, we're active internally. Ron Pressler has also expressed interest in this. Christian Stein is clearly interested in this. So we have people internally. Now, when I say we, I have to be careful which we's I mean. I'm not a member of OpenJDK, so I'm not involved in the development of Java at all. So I occasionally accidentally also say we then, but I shouldn't because, again, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, sure.
The other we is Oracle, though.
And we means you and Larry Ellison. This is if you say we.
Yeah, Larry and I.
We
sit here, hack on Java.
Yeah. He also likes underscores, I guess.
Yeah, and when we're done, we get to call Mark and Brian and tell them, look, Mark, you can act like if this was your idea. Okay, I'll give this idea to you. You go to the conferences and tell all the people that was your idea.
And I can even cut out the section here, right? So this is I'm just interested in the tool, not in the podcast. Okay.
But I want to get back to so I think there's some chance that as I said, like at least now when I say we, like in internal at Oracle, people are interested in this. And when smart people look at something, hopefully they will come up with some solution, or maybe. But sometimes it could also mean they come up with the reason not to do it. And when you said earlier, why not? There's one thing, for example, that I'm sure there are solutions for this, but one obvious challenge is you do not want to have a tool in Java that is bound to Maven Central, like in the JDK. I mean, That's the wrong way for these dependencies to go. That would mean that if some company, let's say, some company who really hates Java, and at this point it's really hard to come up with an example because everybody seems to love Java, which I like. But so let's say like some evil corp comes up, and evil corp hates Java. What they're going to do? They're going to buy Sonatype, and they're going to decommission Maven Central.
Yeah.
And then this Java build tool that has hard-coded Maven dependencies stops working. Clearly, this is a no-go, right? So one challenge would be if Java ever would get such a tool, it would somehow have to have like pluggable resolution. But what is the pluggable resolution? Do we say you can point at a different nexus? Or what about the GAV format, right? Like the coordinates for group, artifact, and version. Is that something that is universal, or is it that really also Maven specific? Do you want to abstract that away as well?
But so I would say pragmatic solutions. I remember if the Oracle took over Sun, of course, and then NetBeans. So everything was fine at Sun times, and then as Oracle came in, you had to say yes if you would like to have the Java C compiler because of some licensing issue. So there was a middle box where you have to say accept and done. So what could happen is you have no dependency resolution, as you said, plugin, and then there is one obvious default one which downloads from Maven, right? So you will add to your lib folder in JRE or Java one known class and will download from Maven Central and done. I would say this would be good enough and it will be pluggable. And then maybe, we could standardize. Why not to have a JSR, Java specification request for Maven dependency, right? So we could have a lightweight dependency resolution spec, for instance.
Right. I mean, clearly there are ways out of this. Also, for example, Gradle, I think, already is packaging information. I think the way that they handle... it's around optional dependencies. I'm not sure whether I can reiterate that. They have another concept for optional dependencies that I can't come up with a name now. But I think the idea is basically... Is it not called feature set? So the idea is my jar that I'm developing has a bunch of core features. For those that need like actual dependencies, they need to be there. But it has this optional feature. And for that optional feature, I need 2 other dependencies. And so the way that Gradle wants this to work, and that I think it works for them, is that I say so now a user of my library would then say, I'm using Nikolai's library and I want to activate that feature. And which other dependencies that pulls in, that's defined in my jar, but they don't need to explicitly do that. They don't need to see, I need this and that optional dependency. They just activate this feature aspect. Again, I forgot the name.
Feature flag, so maybe, right? Almost.
Yeah, it's something like that. But the point is, this information, they cannot map that to the POM that is on Maven Central. So they put in additional information so if you're using my project as a Maven user, you will have a poorer experience than if you use my project as a Gradle user, because as a Maven user, you still have to figure out which are these optional dependencies and add them manually. Whereas when you're a Gradle user, you can just say activate that feature. So what I'm saying here is, already there are at least 2 build tools, and I don't know Bazel well enough, whether they also have specific opinions on what should be in such a standardized dependency format. So yes, that could definitely be a JSR, but it's not obvious whether there will be what and at what point, in what point in time, how long this would take, they could congregate on a common and shared understanding of what should be in there. That's a big ask, right?
I think the approach should be similar to JWeb Server, right? JWeb Server, you stated from the beginning, it is more or less a toy, which helps in the projects, but is not like production application servers, right? And this could be the same. Everyone knows it could be used in production, but I would say it is a minimalistic solution. It does not compete with Gradle and Maven, and it will help us with 80% of all automation job. You could use Java as a scripting language for it, but for larger projects, you will need still Maven because you have the dependency on plugins. And I think the choice for me is clear. If you need, the Maven power with additional plugins, release plugin, profiles, diff adaptation, and Gradle even more automation, then go there. If you just need to have a Java C jar and with Maven dependency, then maybe our JDK build, JB, for instance, would be a great name, JB, right? The JB would be good enough, right? And this would be, because if you try to make it complete, forget it. It would be like, the discussion similar to OSGI back then. Everyone wanted to define a module standard, and it's just minimalism, I think, would win.
No, I agree. That would be reasonable. And didn't want to say that for the reason I just outlined, this cannot happen. I'm just saying that would just be an answer to so it's not trivial. I just want to say there's not like the simple, trivial, obvious solution. Like if you actually think through this, there's clearly a question of like where do we make the cutoff point? At what point do you actually want to use an external build tool after all? How do we abstract away, first of all, Maven Central, but then also the specific properties of the GAV system? Do you want to do that? Will you settle on, no, that's just the way it is now? Anyway, I'm saying it's not trivial, but yeah, I hope that that we'll see something like that at some point, because as I 100% agree, like it would be great for automation, would be great for experienced developers, but specifically would be great for onboarding, because at the moment it's kind of like when you start programming, at the moment you have single source files, then I have something to tell you, which I had to sit on for like the last half an hour while we talked about something else, because I really wanna, like, you will really like it, but still the point is, and at some point the beginner has to learn Maven or an IDE. And that's a serious roadblock, because if you're new, learning about Maven or opening an IDE, just seeing all the menus, that's a lot of new things to learn about. You have to install these, you have to find these tools, you have to pick these tools too, right? Somebody tells you use an IDE, and then 3 people scream at you about IntelliJ and NetBeans and Eclipse and VS Code. There's a 4th guy now yelling at you, and then you have 3 other people yelling at you about Bazel or Gradle or Maven. So it's not only that you have to learn a tool, you first have to understand that there is such a thing as an abstract build tool concept, and then specific implementations of that, and that they do the same thing, and that you pick the one that you need, or just one actually that's easy to learn. And that's also a difficult process. The process, like, I think choice, which is great for the experienced developers, is often a challenge for beginners, because they don't know how to choose. How would they know? Like if I go into a new space that I have no idea about, like if I need some new hardware for recording, and it's the first time I need this kind of hardware, like the first time I look for cameras, I had no idea what aperture means and shutter speed and an ISO and how that plays together and what would be a good camera, what is the bad camera. Just coming to the understanding to make a choice can already be hard. So long story short, yes, having something like this on board for the beginner to just be like, oh yeah, now I'm doing this and boom, it works. That would be really cool, and I'm hoping that we'll see something like that in the future. Crossing fingers here. Or as we say in Germany, as I said in a recent short, pressing thumbs, right?
Yeah,
this is what we do in Germany. We press thumbs. We don't cross fingers.
Yeah, and
but the thing I want, go.
So I'm absolutely with you. And Java, to succeed even more, should be the following, right? You download the OpenJDK, and you can go with it. And for instance, it already starts somehow, because Visual Studio Code is more an editor than an IDE. So I can open a folder, I can just edit and compile the files already without any project. So there's a huge step forward. And if we had the build tool, I think the build tool is more important than how it's called, the Java without main method. This is the simple
simplified main.
Yeah, simplified main. This is nice, but the build tool is the problem. Not that have to remember public static void main. But it's going the right direction. So this is good, but the build tool is really important. And whoever listens at Oracle to the podcast, you have really go for it, because it is usability for new developers is king, and also for not very young developers, younger developers like us, right? Where we would like to automate things, right? And just we know exactly what we are doing is okay. I have lots of small Java programs to do things. And even in the clouds, if you write Lambda in Java or whatever, it is very important to have small things. And there's not a huge project, and this would be the perfect case to do so, right?
Right, yeah. Like a bunch of you opening a bunch of threads. Like I have to keep mentally track of all the started conversations. One thing I want to say is you cannot download the OpenJDK, because the OpenJDK is a project.
Yeah.
You could, like, the closest thing to download that is the OpenJDK would be to clone the OpenJDK code, like the JDK code base in OpenJDK, but probably you don't mean that. If you need a binary that you can run, you have to find somebody to build it for you.
Yes.
It could be Oracle, either the Oracle JDK, which is the one with the Oracle license, or Oracle's OpenJDK build, which is the one with the, what's it called? The GNU, the GPL with class path exception. So anyway, just like a small
or Fuji is a great page where you get millions of open JDKs which are built for you.
Yeah, as I just mentioned, I'm not sure whether choice is always great. Like too much choice is always great for a beginner, specifically because many of these JDKs are just in quotes here. Are just a build of the OpenJDK codebase plus some very minor.
So what is the correct statement? You have to download the build of the OpenJDK, right?
Right, you have to build a build of OpenJDK.
Build of the OpenJDK, okay.
But even further than that, it doesn't have to be a build of OpenJDK, right? Like I can, if I get the TSA key, the Technology Compatibility Kit license from Oracle, I can from the ground up implement everything myself as long as it fulfills that TCK, it's still a Java, and it wouldn't be based on OpenJDK though. And there are examples where at least parts of OpenJDK are replaced by other portions that company deems better, right? So it doesn't have to be a build of OpenJDK. It can totally be something different, as long as it fulfills the TCK and the Java specification and all of that. It is a Java. But yes, realistically speaking, unless you're like, I mean, even companies on the size of Amazon, for good reasons, don't decide to re-implement Java.
What I wanted to tell you, we should not encourage the listeners to create their own Java. This can take longer, usually, if you're alone, right? Yes. So it is, you need lots of vacations to do that.
Yes, that's it. That is true. And also getting the TCK is not exactly trivial. It's not like you can just download it. You need like a contract, and it's complicated. Okay, so you need to download a JDK from somewhere in general, which will often be just a build of OpenJDK. I think the best way to get that for beginners is to go to OpenJDK.org and find the Oracle OpenJDK there. It's just very straightforward. I think dev.java might also link there. I'm not entirely sure right now from the top of my head. But the point is, just get at the beginning, just get some JDK. If you're already on Fuji, if you already know how to download Corretto, whatever. Like if you already know how to get a JDK and you're a beginner, just keep using that JDK. Start going into which one would be better for me when you run stuff in production at a decent scale, right? So until then, it really doesn't matter. Okay.
The easiest way to get JDK is jdk.java.net, and this is the link from OpenJDK. So if
that's the one, yeah.
If you are jdk.java.net/21, you get the OpenJDK from Oracle. I think
that's the Oracle OpenJDK build.
And this is the you get Linux, Macs on Windows, and this is indeed the easiest way. And the Oracle JDK is the origin one. I mean, this is what everything started, right? So this was the one from Sun Microsystems, then merged with JRocket, and then it became, and then there were more and more this OpenJDK. I mean, this is the core of all JDKs, and every vendor like Azul, Oracle, Corretto, they have some small fraction of secret source, but usually it's the same source code.
You're right. That's what I said earlier, right? So many of these companies have like a distinguishing factor, something that they think they can add to the mix, but most of the rest is then OpenJDK.
But why I'm iterating over this? Because I get this question a lot in projects, especially in companies who are new to Java. They say, okay, is there only Oracle? What happens if Oracle stops doing the JDKs? It's okay. This was the origin one, but there are other vendors, and Oracle is not the dominant one. So if you take everyone, so maybe Oracle is 50% and all the others the other 50%, and this is a important message. And for this, the other fraction will say everything is defragmented, and we cannot rely on Java anymore. It's okay. I mean, if you would like to have the big ones, you can pick Azul, Oracle, or Corretto from Amazon, and this is huge companies behind, right? Or IBM.
Yeah.
And this is two camps that criticize from both directions. And so we have to just explain it's not only Oracle, but if you pick Oracle, it will just work, and nothing wrong with this decision. It's just OpenJDK and no issues, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think the fragmentation argument is not good. It's like saying I want to buy a truck for my shop that I'm running. I'm running a shop now, a real life shop. I need a truck, but the truck market is too fragmented, so I don't trust the truck technology anymore. Yeah. That would be like a very weird statement, and it's basically the same here. More people building and handing out open JDKs does not mean anything about the possible fragmentation of the ecosystem. And as you said, the ecosystem is at both, Oracle is obviously a main driver in there, but there's also the rest of the community. And this is like a weird hypothetical, but let's say Oracle will make poof and tomorrow it's gone. That would be obviously, including all the people, right? Like in this, the aliens come and they abduct everybody working at Oracle. Mm-hmm. Obviously that would leave like huge vacancies in all of OpenJDK and all of the community, but there is a rest of the community that can, if they step up their game, fill that then. So even if a company is afraid that Oracle goes bust and takes everything under, that would be a challenge for Java, clearly. But the difference between Java and maybe some ecosystem where there is really just one company driving all of it is it would not have to disappear. If the rest of the companies decide, no, this is worth keeping afloat, this is worth investing in to basically pick up the slack, then that would be entirely possible. And so I think that's the strength of the ecosystem. At the same time, you have a strong community there, but you also don't have to do everything by committee, that there's one company that says, no matter everybody else does, we're going to invest into the further development of OpenJDK. We're just going to keep doing that. And that's also, I think, good, because that means, that's not everybody's is glancing at each other, who's making the first move.
Mhm.
There's no tragedy of the commons going on here, where everybody hopes that the other ones invest first. Oracle is basically saying, no, we're going to invest, we're going to keep pushing this. And that, I think, gives a lot of other companies the trust to say, so, with one big company pushing this, we can also get into the game, and we can start implementing in-house skills and use and reliance on that technology. And that means that then more companies use it and know about it. And I mean, not just know about it, but do have the skills to keep developing it in this weird case where the aliens take Oracle away.
I had this Monday, there was the AX TV show, and I had a question. Someone had idea about named parameters in record and asked me, how to make it happen in Java. And I said, okay, if you would really like to contribute a language feature, so I would suggest, to go to OpenJDK mailing list first, present the feature, and you could maybe feedback. And if you're lucky, you could create your own JAP. And and he said, okay, he didn't knew the entire process, right? And I said, okay, don't be afraid, because the JAPs are human readable and actually very well readable. So this is and this is designed by committee. It is negative, but it sounds negative, right? But in the case of Java, what happened was all the JAPs, the entire documentation, if you read it, even as a Java beginner, is absolutely understandable. So this is like, this is the current state, this is the problem, possible solution, our solution. So this is, and it reads, it's like 2-pager, most of them, or the 3 pages, how to tell in a browser, but this is not very long document. And this is where the JAPs are organized. And the JAP 0 is like the index of all JAPs, and all the other JAPs, you can just, take a look at them. And so I would say very positive experience. So but what I just wanted to explain, that you have to go to jdkjava.net/21 currently, and then if you download whatever fits to your operating system, you should be ready to go. And if you had a small build tool, then you could actually create already automation apps and scripting apps from scratch with external dependencies, and sometimes they are needed. Like in my case, AWS SDK, for instance, or let's say Oracle JDBC driver, very, very similar problem, or Postgres driver, whatever, right? So this is my use case: download and go. So how many clicks you need to be productive in a language? This is my measurement. And the last thing, because we are almost over time, a really nice story with Herd is the creator of BLD, and why he created BLD is crazy. So he's actually, this synthesizer company called Moog, Moog. They built, Jean-Michel Jarre and all the others. They are using the synthesizers. It's like Gibson guitars or something in synthesizer. It's like the inventor of synthesizers, and he's the director of engineering, I think. And he had to build a checkout process, and he spent the entire time. He built a framework, a web framework called Rive in 2005, whatever. And I knew the framework, so this is why he invited him to talk about the framework. But now, over all the years, he skipped Java, he did Objective-C, whatever, and now he had to do something in web again. And I say, okay, I'll pick my old Rive, make Java 21 out of that, migrate to it, and we'll use it for checkout process of the synthesizers.
Okay.
So, and he did it, but they say the build system is somehow strange. So he created the BLD in 2 weeks, and now it comes. Then everything is fine. He is a skilled developer, and he did it. It works everything perfectly. He was amazed how productive Java is, but he taught non-Java developers, C and Objective-C developers, Java with BLD and the frameworks. They become productive and really like Java, and we're surprised how productive it is. This is the interesting part. Not that he managed to do that, but he used his invention with BLD and framework and created some templates, and they were very productive, and the project is successful. And now you can buy your own synthesizer at Moog, M-O-O-G, or Moog. This is hard to pronounce. But this is the story. And this is how it should be, right? You have a Python developer or JavaScript developer. It's like, hey, Java, you download one file and you are productive. So no JS or whatever they are doing there, just one file. And Java, for unknown reasons, comes with the, how to call it, stigma that Java is somehow it is hard to set up, which is no more true for years. You can install without SDK man with just every other day a Java and it will work, right? So this is very simple. It can't be any simpler, actually. I don't know any other language that is so simple to install like Java, no?
I mean, I don't know actually that many other languages. I know that
NPM is harder. JavaScript is harder. Python.
We use Jekyll for something at work. Inside.java is built with Jekyll, and I so far I skirted around installing all the Ruby. It's really hard for me not to say the Ruby crap. Nothing against Ruby itself, but I had really bad experiences with the Ruby ecosystem, specifically around Jekyll, of like having different Jekyll versions around the different gems and different versions, and I screwed it up.
Yeah.
So my Ruby experience, for example, in that space is not great either.
Yeah, Ruby, I can tell you Python, very similar. There's Python 3. If you do it on Mac, you have to link from Python to Python 3. Lots of threads. I still don't know what is the Pythonic, way to do that, because there's old Python and new Python. Then I would say C is maybe the easiest, but I have no idea if you have no C, how to set up the environment. You have to download something. I think the C compiler is already there. So this is, I would say, and maybe Rust is also easier to install. But Python, Ruby, JavaScript, way harder than Java. In Java is double click on your OpenJDK usually, and you are ready to go.
Okay, Adam, I know that we're starting to run out of time, but there are like 5 things on my list that I need to, like 5 threads that we started, or like things that you said that I felt like I should react to. And
react now.
Okay, first, about the ease of setup. Yes, downloading the OpenJDK and then just going, that's great. But specifically if people are, like, once they're past that step, that they are in a position where they feel comfortable installing a tool, and you mentioned already, I would definitely recommend SDK Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to pick all the JDKs that you might want, but also to go beyond that and install the Maven, the Gradle version that you want. It really makes it easy to switch between the different versions of the terminal, which is great if you're experimenting and working at the same time on different things. So I think that would be a big shout out to SDK Man. I think most developers, maybe at least the developer advocates who have like a lot of different Java versions playing around with at the same time, everybody wrote their own rickety version of SDK Man with some stupid script that would change the path variable. This is just so much better, and I can already recommend that.
So I'm the developer who does that, but for different reasons. But SDK Man is great, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is that I really think you'll be happy about is much of the automation you described, and I hope the people who heard it in the podcast earlier are still listening now, much of the automation that you want, and specifically the one thing with the Amazon SDK, you can already replace your use of Maven there. If you go to jdk.java.net/22 and you download that one, I mean, that would be the early access build at this point, you get a feature called multi-source file launchers, which is exactly like the single source file launchers with a few important differences. One of them is you cannot use them as a bash script. You can have the shebang line in a single source file running like a bash script. That part does not work anymore. What you get it still works for single source files, but it does not work if you have multiple source files, because that's what works now. Just like in the past, you would say Java space hello.java and would run hello.java, but in the past, it would fail if hello.java referenced another file. Now, if you reference another file, it would go looking for that. If it finds it, it will compile it in memory as well, and will keep running. And it will also do that for libraries. So if you have an already downloaded jar in a folder somewhere, that's called a lib, you can launch Java, then -cp for class path, and then !lib/*. So it's not quite as short anymore. But then you put the library on the class path, and it will also find all the stuff in there. I'm not sure when this podcast airs, so whether it's before or after, but I can already tell you, audience, that on the 15th of February, that is the Thursday in the middle of February, Inside Java Newscast will go live, where I go into that feature in a little bit more detail than I did just now. And that is such a huge step forward as well. Yeah. So now you can go from the very simplified main to like a full file full of cool Java stuff. And then you realize it's too much. I still want to write more Java. So you put it into several source files to organize it better. Could be just flat files, but you can also already start using packages if you want to. You can pull in libraries, which at this point still kind of raises the question, where do I get a jar though? So that's unfortunately not solved yet. That's where the build to that we discussed earlier would come in. But assuming you get a jar from somewhere, you can keep going, and you can have something that you don't even need to compile. You can just upload, 3 Java files in a library to somewhere in the cloud, and then you can automate your stuff there. So that was 2 big things I want to come back to. You said about ways to contribute. When I said design by committee, that was like, yes, it has a negative touch, but I didn't want to talk about the development within OpenJDK itself. I meant that on a little bit of a higher level, where I was talking about how does Java move forward in general. Mm-hmm. I think that's where there is not that much committee, because basically it's whoever puts down the money gets to do a thing, more or less. It's not quite like that. But, if a company has a good idea that makes sense in OpenJDK, the question is not, will it be done because if it's good enough of an idea? The question is, will somebody say, yeah, we put the money behind it to pay 3 people to develop this actually? So if there's given a good idea that works within OpenJDK, the question then is just one of execution. And if you want Oracle to do it, Oracle's employees, then they will be like, I don't know whether this is worth it or not. But if you have the money to do it yourself, like if you pay somebody, for example, a good example is Project Lilliput, which Roman Kenke is developing. I think he started back at his old employer, which I think was Red Hat. And now, did I say Robert? Roman Kenke. And now he's working at Amazon. Either way, he's pushing Project Lilliput, right? So it's a good idea, good project, works great with an OpenJDK. Now it's just in quotation marks again, a matter of execution. Somebody needs to pay that, right? So that's what I meant, like on a higher level, assuming the idea
or
is
Snapstart,
good,
right? Azul.
They're pushing Crack, for example, yeah. Although I do see
Crack.
chances for that to work.
Snapstart is Crack, exactly.
Yeah, although like that's a different thing. There's like technical reasons to believe that it may not work because the whole the programming model of Snapstart or like Crack is, we give you this feature, now you have to figure out how to make it work for your system.
It's clear, but they did it by their own. This correct.
Exactly.
This is
right.
This is what I wanted to say. Not right. Exactly. It's problematic, but useful. Problematic, but it's done outside Oracle.
Yeah. And so within OpenJDK to contribute, that means within OpenJDK, like what features get selected and like specifically like smaller details, that is very much by committee, right? There is the question then, okay, let's have. I mean, within OpenJDK, there's kind of a hierarchical structure. So there is like a lead for language developments, for example, right? So you have to technically only convince one person, so it's not really that much of a committee. But in real life, you will have to get some support, find some people who like this is a good idea, help you write it up, and that way you can get a change through. This is not a great way to start contributing, though. This is like the end game of contributions, because that's really hard. There are so many steps in between that that people can contribute to. And if they go to dev.java/contribute, they will see an exploration of these different ways to contribute. Starting with the mailing list, like I have this idea for a JEP, is really, really hard. If you want to go to the mailing list with a feature idea that you have, I want to really recommend, do not start with the idea. Start with the problem. Describe in excruciating detail what problem you have, why you think this is prevalent in the ecosystem, why you think this is a problem that needs to be solved within OpenJDK. And then maybe allude that you have an idea for a solution.
But in my case, it was a young developer. And they say, okay, name parameters in the record. So we have encouraged such a thing, right? So my expectation is he will not write a mail to dev. How would you say dev? What is the mail again? Dev.
No. I just said dev.java/contribute.
Dev.java.contribute.
But you cannot write a mail there.
Yeah, but you say,
to the mailing
no,
list.
if it says, I'm really interested in contributing, this is my idea, it's not like someone will answer you're stupid, rather than interesting idea, maybe it doesn't work but he's already in touch. Maybe something happens. Maybe he gets, support from Oracle, or can do, vacation works there, or you are already in touch. And so this is why, they should be discouraged. And the idea is good enough. You can just, send, I have the idea and see what happens. This would be my take on it. And I did it in the past in 2000 as well. So I had my own idea for JSR. I just, created that. At the end, it died because of political reasons. But I just tried to be nice and contribute something, and it worked half, right? So I was surprised that I went that far, because I had to compete with IBM and all the others, and still worked. So what I mean is, this was my take, and I just said, okay, the first one is the mailing list, what I will start, and I didn't mention this dev contribute because I didn't knew about the link. But I was surprised by the question, but it was a nice one. So
right, yeah. So I agree that that the mailing list is a good way to go to. But I'm saying, don't spend a ton of time exploring your solution without finding out whether this is a problem that OpenJDK considers worth solving. So specifically on the unnamed arguments example, because I know that that's a feature that has been considered and is very likely not to happen ever in Java, at least not in the foreseeable future. I had an interview, maybe we can put that into the show notes, where I asked Brian Getz, that's also where the Japanese emperor story comes from, where I did an AMA at DevOps Belgium last year, where I gathered audience questions in advance and then asked all kinds of people, and had a long conversation with Brian Getz. And people asked for named arguments. And he explained, and I'm not going to reiterate that all here, why that is a big challenge in Java and will likely not happen. And so that's what I mean, right? If you sit down and think this is a good idea and start to wonder how to write this up and maybe already explore the OpenJDK code base, you are potentially wasting a lot of effort. And that could be frustrating. It could be frustrating to come to a JDK mailing list to be like, I had this great idea. I have it worked out. It's also cool, be full of energy. Only for Brian Getz to tell you, yeah, we're not going to do this. Here's a link to the explanation why, and then you get like a 3-liner answer that stomps all over your dreams.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying start with the problem statement. And first, that's also the better way, by the way, to convince those people that there's actually a problem worth solving. Don't start with the solution. Start with the problem. And let's figure out what a solution or part of a solution, or maybe this just gets subsumed by some bigger effort that is going on right now. That was just my recommendation, to make sure to reduce, especially these people who are energetic and want to start with something, to not have them be frustrated.
Exactly.
But at least start them at the right end of things.
And we have similar problem here with the builder, right? So how to make, Brian Getz and everyone interested in pursuit. Yeah, this is the same story. So,
Yeah.
This is hard to explain, but we know from developer experience and marketing experience is very important to Java. And the problem is sometimes what I also see. I had a conversation with Paul Sanders, maybe Paul, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And what was interesting, what I also saw there, it has to be, right? This is like an interface between us and Paul implement this interface. I'm using the interface, so he is we had a discussion about Wasm, and I say, okay, for me, I don't have to be able to know. Paul thought if I say Wasm, I would like to cross compile my entire Java code base to Wasm. And I would be happy have to one simple method be compiled to Wasm, right? So the expectations from the OpenJDK implementors is like perfection. So we would like, to deliver the 100% solution, and it has to be perfect. And my user expectation is, okay, we could have a subset, right? So if we say it works only with methods, we can also agree on it. And this is sometimes the project work and the platform work. There are two different users and or personas interested. I had the same discussion with application servers, developers. So I didn't care what they do internally, and they were very about modularization. Try, to impress me with the modules. I say I don't care about your modules. I would like to put it fast and use it. Whether you have one module or 500, I don't care. And this was this is why it's also important to listen, to people from outside. So just an ideas. This is not necessary to make current Java maybe work better, but is necessary for marketing, almost like a fashion. So everyone expects with one single click, everything works off the box. And they say, okay, it doesn't matter for large companies. So, but what if, startups, small developers, acceptance? And this is why we should also push it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like when specifically this prejudice that Java is complicated, and if you can show people now, actually, I started submitting a talk where I basically want to talk to non-Java developers about who Java is, and I'll see where I get with that over the year. The last point on my list, and then you can kick me out. Was about the topic of LTS. We already talked about vendors earlier, about who builds OpenJDK and how and why, and that OpenJDK offers no binaries. And basically, my reason for why I say people should not say Java 21 is an LTS version is because the bodies who produce Java 21 is the Java community process, which works the specification out, and then there is OpenJDK, which works on the implementation. And of course, there's some back and forth between those two, but those are the two bodies. None of those bodies do support. They don't care. They develop a specification and a reference implementation. They don't even build binaries except as a proof that their reference implementation works. So what I'm saying here is the two bodies that produce Java know no concept of support, long or short term. And that's why Java 21 is an LTS, can be a reasonable shorthand, but you should know what it really means. And the problem is that the shorthand replaced the real understanding.
Okay.
The real understanding is Java 21 is a version for which many vendors offer some kind of support, often for a long time. Yes. And I think this is just a little bit more detailed, but I think it becomes important because if you do not have this understanding, many things seem very confusing and threatening. So for example, every time Oracle touches the license, all kind of business analysts go crazy because now Java changed its license. No, one vendor that offers a license and a support model and a paid contract on top of Java changed their model. I mean, given Oracle is an important one, but still, that does not touch on what the other ones do. We didn't change Oracle didn't change the OpenJDK license. I'm not even sure whether that's possible at this point, but none of that happened, right? And I think so. This misunderstanding of Java being something that gets LTS becomes confusing when then different companies change their model. When Oracle said we want to do every 2 years now instead of every 3 years, other companies would have been free to stick to 3 years.
Exactly.
They decided not to for a variety of reasons, but it's not that one company, Oracle or other, can just totally upend all of this. And
but I think most companies agreed that Java 21 is long-term support, right? So if you go
right, most companies offer that.
Yeah, this
right.
is what
And
I mean. So one company, if I would be a small company, I would say I would do my LTS with Java 22 plus whatever to be different, right? But you're right. So this is why I'm mostly in enterprise projects, and there all my clients almost have on support with one company, and everyone LTS is Azul is, I think LTS is 21 and the others as well. But you're right. It is not exact. It is actually wrong. We talk about OpenJDK, something like LTS is not available. LTS is a paid feature, right?
Exactly, and that comes on top of that. We just talked about how Java or OpenJDK don't do these things. What the vendors do is also not at all always the same thing. So you could be confused thinking that, hey, let's say you have a JDK from somewhere, and you're running that on your premise. And it's Java 21. And now you're thinking, okay, it's JDK 21. This is an LTS version, so clearly I can get support for this. And the question highly depends on what you run there and what you mean by support. So if you mean by support, you can now call somebody with your problem. There's actually a really good chance that you cannot.
Yeah.
Like if you download Oracle OpenJDK, there's nobody to call.
Exactly.
If you downloaded something that Adoptium published, they don't have a hotline for you.
Yeah.
If you run Corretto, and so by the way, when I talk about other organizations or companies outside of Oracle, I might make mistakes. I hope I don't, but that's entirely possible. So, for example, as far as I understand, Amazon does not give you support for your.
But it's not about
you run
call
Corretto,
center.
it's how they run.
It's about security patches and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, you get patches, but it's not always about that. I mean, everybody who has a contract with a Java vendor like Oracle, I know that I work on the other side of things. We do get calls by our customers. I mean, not me personally, right? But they occasionally do raise issues that need fixing in a certain timeline, and that is given to them by their contract. So it's not about literally calling somebody. It's about getting in touch with somebody who can help you fix your high priority problem in a time that does not necessarily depend on what the whole OpenJDK machine.
What's important for my client is an enterprise project that if you're running something we call LTS, that you got the application is 5 years in production, and you can stick with Java 21 and get security patches. This is what is important.
Yeah. I would call that maintained.
Maintained. Okay. But this is what everyone means in enterprise projects. And call center, they have maybe no one calls that because they don't even know how to do that. So in my world, right? But you are absolutely right. But this is my reality. So I can easily now push everyone to Java 21. And I have harder time to push everyone to Java 22. This is the reality, because if I know I'm half right with the LTS, but this is what my clients listen to, because this matches they cycle with the vendors, and it's easier to migrate from 17 to 21. But it's really hard, to go with 22.
Yeah, and I agree with that, right? I get that, the rationale for why companies stay on which version is untouched by my description just now. But I think it's still important to try to use the right phrases here, because first of all, it's not very complicated.
No.
It's just a little bit of an extra step. But second of all, it gives people a much better understanding, and they're not that threatened or surprised by different developments. If you go into
Do you
detail,
mean that's a misunderstanding? Because for me, it was crystal clear.
No, it is. No,
okay.
It is. It is. Many people do not know this distinction.
Okay.
I mean, and you can see that on business analysts, for example, because as I said, they go crazy when something changes there.
Because there was no change. This LTS or whatever it was back then was just Oracle, and now there are other vendors, and the other vendors behave like Oracle with the support, and they could choose different strategies. Let's say with Azul, okay, now Java 18 is LTS, and the other is LTS, they will disappear. But all other vendors agreed somehow with the cadence of Oracle. So this is maybe the problem, right? So they just took over the lifecycle of Oracle, I think.
But since you brought it up, Azul is a good example. They offered medium-term support for 13 and 15.
Okay.
Now, if I have this logic, and I know you said it's a shorthand for you, I understand that. But for many people, it's not. Many people base their understanding on the term Java 21 is LTS. And I know that because I get bombarded with that constantly. What do they think about Java 15? Was it? I think it was 17. Wait, was it? It was 11 got long-term support at Azul, and 17 did with most other vendors too, and they had MTS for 13 and 15. I'm not sure whether they had MTS for 19, but the point is these two versions. If somebody used them, do they now think this is an MTS version? Does that apply to the entire Java 15, or does it just apply to the JDK that they downloaded from Azul? And so that's why I think this shorthand, when it replaces the actual understanding, it leads you to misunderstand other things that are happening. And that's why I will always tell people, please don't use this anymore. Give him just, all I say is Java 21 is a version with long-term support, which is not much longer than Java 21 is a long-term support version.
Yeah.
But it already prevents this misunderstanding and opens up the conversation about what the actual facts are. They're not that complicated. So I really think it would help if everybody, included Adam maybe at some point, starts changing the phrasing a little bit to help people better understand how the ecosystem works.
Yeah. How it works in a larger company, usually is one person. It is not even in charge only Java. It manages other software as well. If you do nothing, you don't get any upgrades. So it means if you, for instance, right? So if you would like to use Docker with Java 21, so this person will initiate a super Docker image with the operating system, company certificates, and the entire thing. If you do nothing, you get Java 11 because no one complains, right? So in order to upgrade Java to a newer version, you need an argument. So you have, to tell the person, we need now Java 12, 13, 15, or whatever. And my best strategy was to mention LTS, and I got this right. And now I will misuse it as long everything is Java 21. And then I said after discussion, half year passes. It was like after discussion with Oracle, which is you, Nikolai, say there's no more LTS, so now we have immediately upgrade to Java 22, right? LTS, this was half a year ago, and now we need to go away from the old, term LTS, and we are now fresh Java developers. And now we are.
If you do that, please don't bring up my name. Please don't mention me by name if you tell people
There's
that.
like I talk with I chat with some people at Oracle, and they know what they are talking about. And LTS is no more available, so we should obviously use now Java 22 because Java 21 LTS is the outdated version.
We have to talk about this, Adam, at some point.
Yeah.
Like we have to make sure. Like, can I please be on those calls in the future? So just to make sure that I can chime in when you say something like that. So okay, that was my list, though. So that was a list of open threads that I wanted to close.
You got your time. I have the problem that we only covered 10% of DOP, so we have to do it next time.
Yeah, we're gonna meet again as we always do.
Yeah,
cool.
We will do it right after the show. I will ask you for a date. And now, where people can find you, your channel, that you can increase your CSV stats a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, people can find me as NipaFX, NIPAFX, on all the platforms that I'm active on. But more importantly, as I said earlier, we do publish most of the videos on the Java YouTube channel. So that would be youtube.com/Java.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to read up on what works in Java and how it works and how to contribute and what communities meet close to you, go to dev.java, which means Java is now a top-level domain. I mean, not now, it's not new, but .java is a top-level domain. And no, you cannot have your own page there.
Mm-hmm.
So even I cannot create new pages there. It's very restricted. Anyway, if you care about how Java is evolved and developed itself, right? Like if you care about these projects, like what Brian Götz thinks about named arguments, for example, go to insight.java,
Mm-hmm.
which is the look under the hood of development of OpenJDK.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to recommend, youtube.com/Java, and then dev.java and insight.java. And just in general, follow the official accounts. There's a Twitter account as well. Follow if you're still on X or Twitter. We're not in the Fediverse yet. Maybe that changes at some point in the future. I'm personally active on Blue Sky and on Mastodon.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're there, you can find me as NipaFX there, and on X and on YouTube. I have a Discord. Go to nipafx.dev. That would be my website. And then you will find at the top links to everywhere where I am. And you can follow there.
Okay, cool. So see you next time.
See you next time, Adam. Yeah, that was fun, as usual.